Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to Level-Headed News. I'm your host, Brenda, and I got a special edition for you. Seems like there's a big brouhaha going on over in Italy right now. I've got 3 articles on this that I thought I'd just throw into a special edition for you. The first one is off of dailymail.co.uk, and it says, now for Italexit. Europe hit by a new anti-establishment revolt as Italian Prime Minister resigns after losing a referendum that could now gift power to populists wanting to take the country out of the euro. Europe was rocked again last night after the latest populist surge against Brussels. The Italian Prime Minister was swept from power after calling a referendum on constitutional reform, which became a vote on confidence in his government. Matteo Renzi resigned shortly after exit polls indicated a clear defeat, saying, "I accept all responsibility for this loss. I say it out loud." The result is a further landmark victory for populist movements following Britain's vote for Brexit and Donald Trump's election win in the United States. Mr. Renzi's opponent, Beppe Grillo, had urged voters to go with your gut, not your brain, and had called for Italy to ditch the euro. And there's some video in this if you want to take a look at that article. All the URLs are in the description of this video, so you can check them out at your leisure. The article goes on and says the prospects of an Italian vote on leaving the single currency and by extension the EU itself now draw closer. Markets were braced for a turbulent day today, with the country already facing a major banking crisis. What should have been a referendum on changes to the upper house of the Italian parliament had escalated into a vote on Mr. Renzi's handling of the crisis confronting Italy, economic meltdown, and the record number of migrants. Having already pledged to step down in the event of a no vote, Mr. Renzi's departure will create fresh political instability at home and give fresh momentum to anti-establishment movements across the West. Mr. Renzi said he felt bitterness, rage, sadness, and disappointment when he conceded the referendum, adding, "I'd like to go hug each and every one of you. We had a chance, but we were not able to convince the majority of our citizens. We had millions of votes, which is impressive, but not enough. I accept all responsibility. He who fights for an idea cannot lose. The experience with my government will end here. You can't pretend for the 1,000th time that everything will remain. I wanted to change. I wasn't able to do so, deliver change to Italy, so therefore I will have to leave." In an emotional press conference, he said he did all he could, but will resign officially tomorrow when he meets his colleagues. The result will reduce the Senate's influence and withdraw power from 20 regional governments in the country, gifting power to populists committed to taking the country out of the euro, who argue the country's economy had stagnated since joining the currency nearly 15 years ago. And then there's an insert here that says, what happens next for Italy and the European Union? The prospects of an Italian vote on leaving the single currency and by extension the EU itself now draw closer. Markets were based for a turbulent day today, with the countries already facing a major banking crisis. What should have been a referendum on changes to the upper house of the Italian parliament had escalated into the vote on Mr. Renzi's handling of the crisis confronting Italy, economic meltdown, and record number of migrants. Having already pledged to step down in the event of a no vote, Mr. Renzi's departure will create fresh political instability at home and give fresh momentum to the anti-establishment movement across the West. Almost 60 years to the month, when the Treaty of Rome gave birth to the European Economic Community from which the EU has evolved, the city finds itself at the heart of the European story again. An exit poll by the Pipoli Institute, I guess it is. It's called the IPR for state television stations. The RAI estimated a no vote at 54 to 58% against and 42 to 46% for yes. Two other polls gave no a similar lead of at least 10 points. Voting ended at 11 p.m. The euro immediately fell against the dollar on the exit polls, slipping to 1.0580 from 1.0625. The rejection represents a fresh blow to the European Union, which is struggling to overcome an array of crises and was eager for Renzi to continue his reform drive in the Eurozone, heavily indebted third largest economy. Italy is proposing to run budget deficit of 2.4% of the GDP for the year, significantly higher than the 1.8% level it had promised to deliver earlier this year. Deputies on Friday voted overwhelmingly in favor of a draft 2017 budget that the European Commission has warned will breach EU rules with the management of public finances. Luca Comodo, director at polling company Ipsos, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, it's IPSOS, told the paper voters, think blocking the government's plans is a vote against the establishment, and said the South is where protest and rage are amplified. The issue has provoked sharp changes in recent weeks, with Renzi seen in some quarters as Brussels bashing in the run-up to a December 4th referendum on constitutional reform, on which he has staked his political future. New spending plans in the budget include 2 billion euros more for healthcare, 1 billion for education, and measures to help small companies and poor families. Renzi said earlier this month that he would no longer bow to dislikes from Brussels over fiscal restraints he regards as counterproductive at a time when the most of the Eurozone is struggling. He has also threatened to block the approval of the EU institutions' collective budget if other countries do not offer Italy more help in coping with the arrival of thousands of migrants on its southern shores. A 2017 deficit of 2.4% of GDP would leave Italy comfortably with the EU ceiling of 3%. But the commissioners, economists say Rome should bring down its deficit faster to ensure that the upward trend in the country's huge debt mountain, equivalent to over 130% of GDP, is reversed. The 2017 budget law will only be definitively approved once it has been examined by the second chamber of Parliament, the Senate, which has not scheduled any debate on it until after the referendum. Former Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi cast his ballot to reject the reforms. He shook hands with election officials and posed for photographers after voting in the capital, Rome. Berlusconi's Forza Italia party is largely in disarray, with a tax fraud conviction keeping the 80-year-old center-right leader out of the public office. There is insert here that tells the next flashpoints for Europe, if you want to pull that up and check that out. So there's the first article. The second article I have is off Business Insider, and it says Italy's prime minister resigns after landslide defeat in a referendum vote. Italy's Prime Minister Matteo Renzi announced his resignation in Rome shortly after midnight on Monday after losing critical referendum battle on which he staked his political career. Italy has chosen, now it's up to those who won to make proposals, Renzi said during a press conference at Palazzo Chigi, the prime minister's residence in Rome. I'll take all responsibility for the defeat. Italian voters Sunday on whether to significantly cut the number of senators in Italy's government, a move Renzi argued would significantly cut bureaucracy in Italy, and an obscure debate were not for Renzi's declaration earlier this year that he would resign if Yes did not win. No won by a large margin, with results showing 60% to 40% in its favor as of this publication. The rest is seen as a rejection of Renzi and his leadership, and leaves an opening for Beppe Grillo and his increasingly powerful populist five-star movement to fill the void. I've lost, Renzi said. I believe in democracy. I'm not looking the other way. My government experience ends here, he added. Renzi is leaving after just 2.5 years in office. The 41-year-old former mayor of Florence was seen by his supporters as a breath of fresh air, and his vow to eradicate crippling bureaucracy earned him the nickname Demolition Man from his critics. Instead, Renzi reforms saw little impact, and the five-star movement began tapping into the wave of nationalist populism spreading through the West post Brexit. When it became clear around midnight in Italy that no won a decisive victory, the euro began dropping sharply. The currency was down by 0.9% at 1.0573 against the dollar as of 7:19 p.m. Eastern Time. It fell earlier as low as 1.0506 against the dollar, the lowest level since March of 2015. Business Insider Italia reporter Giuliano Ballestieri weighed in after Renzi's speech. Renzi will meet with Italian President Sergio Mattarella Monday morning to formally resign his title. Italian media are floating economic minister Pier Carlo Padone and Senate Chairman Pietro Grasso as leading candidates to replace Renzi. And there are videos in this if you want to check those out at your leisure. And the last article I have on this subject is off of Business Insider. It says the euro is dividing as Italy's prime minister resigns amid a landslide referendum vote. The euro is dividing as Italy's prime minister resigns amid a landslide defeat referendum vote. The currency is down by 0.9% at 1.0573 against the dollar as of 7:19 p.m. Eastern Time. Earlier, it tumbled as low as 1.0506, the lowest level since March of 2015. Italy's Prime Minister Matteo Renzi announced his resignation in Rome shortly after midnight local time on Monday, after losing the critical referendum on which he staked his political career. Italians voted Sunday on whether to significantly cut the number of senators in Italy's government, a move Renzi argued would significantly cut bureaucracy in Italy. Renzi stated earlier this year that he would resign if Yes did not win. No one by a significant margin. with figures currently showing 60% to 40% in its favor, the result is seen as a rejection of Renzi and his leadership. The Italian referendum follows several other political events in 2016 that saw reverberations in currency markets. Chief among them, the Brexit vote back in June when Britons voted to leave the European Union, the coup in Turkey, and the November election of Donald Trump. So there you have that information. If you like what we're doing here, give it a thumbs up, share it around, let people know where the real news is.